Good afternoon, dear students. I am Dr. Asif Fasula, Academic Counselor of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, Hyderabad. Today, in this counseling session on Course 7, that is aspects of language and their relation to literature, we will be talking about some of the speech functions and language as a social identity. If time permits, we will also take up some other important topics. But primarily, our focus would be on the topic, that is speech functions and language as a social identity. I welcome you all on this online counseling session being hosted by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. Students, you know that in your MA program, MA English program, there is one prescribed course, and the title of the course is Aspects of Language and Their Relation to Literature. Understand how language and literature are related. In what way both complement each other. And in doing so, if we look at the contents page of the SLM, self-learning material, shared with you of this paper, that is aspects of language and the relation to literature, you will see that this paper is structured in such a way that it highlights both various characteristics of language and various characteristics of literature. And also the way or different characteristics of language that play a defining role in literature, and how literature benefits language. Primarily, various language features and characteristics that shape different genres of literature. Those discussions we will have when we take up the topic language of literature. But in this counseling session, in this counseling class, our focus would remain on speech functions and language as a social identity. So, let us begin our discussion for today. And I will also take up questions or doubts posed by the students who have joined this online counseling session. Yes, under functions of language, we will take up a question. We know that language is a means of communication, and language is essential for human existence. Language is used by human beings to do variety of things in day-to-day life. And the fact that other than human beings also have their own languages. The only thing is that we may or may not understand their language fully. In the same way, as a speaker of Telugu or Urdu who is completely unfamiliar with, say, Chinese as a language or Russian as a language or any other African language, Swahili or some other language, may not understand what the people speaking in that particular language are communicating with each other. So, unless we understand that language, unless we learn that language, it becomes difficult to understand the message being conveyed. So there are human languages and there are non-human or animal languages or languages of other species that we do not know. So let's come to our human languages. We know that if a human child or a human being needs something, he or she uses language to convey the need, what exactly is needed. And if there is uh, if there is any other tasks that has to be performed, that too is conveyed through language. There are numerous tasks, numerous actions that we perform using human language, our language. If you look at what are variety of things that we do using the language, or if you look at uses of language or our speech, then we can note down that according to Oral Trask, who has in 1995 showed or wrote that there are certain uses and functions of language. According to Trask, we use language to pass on information. To pass on information. For example, if I know about a particular incident from the past, or if I know a piece of information which my listener or a person who is hearing me doesn't know, then I share that information with that hearer. So this is what we usually do in our day-to-day life. We typically share past experiences in the form of information to those who do not know or those who are interested to know. So the first kind of function or use of a language is to pass on information. And then you have another kind of task, another kind of use, that is we use language to amuse ourselves, right? Amusement. We read a lot of things. We share with our friends, our relatives, our acquaintances, a lot of information and a lot of prior things. If you recall, we use language to make somebody laugh, right? We use language in a way that it appears funny to our audience, to our listener, somebody who's hearing us. For example, we crack jokes, right? We create funny stories. We narrate uh, funny incidents and in our life or somebody's life, so that the person who's listening to it and becomes happy, he enjoys it or she enjoys it. So the second kind of use of language is to amuse ourselves or amuse also others, right? Now the third kind of function or use of language is to entertain. This is something we are quite familiar with, right? If you do it yourself, right, it is one way, one thing. But if you entertain, if you make others laugh, right, through joke, through crooked or deviant use of language, by creating ambiguity, that kind of usage of language is actually for entertainment. So we looked at three different uses of language so far: to pass on information, to amuse ourselves. We are not doing it for others, but for ourselves. We read some joke and become happy, laugh, smile, right? We hear something funny and we become happy, we laugh. But to make others happy, to make other laugh, smile, that is what we call entertain others. A lot of stand-up comedians these days, they they create a script in such a way, they write dialogues in such a way that when they deliver it, those who are participating in that show, those who are listening to it online, they laugh on those dialogues. They feel happy on listening to those dialogues. They enjoy those dialogues. So Use of language for entertainment. So this is a third different function of a language. We not only use it for passing on information, but we also use the language to make ourselves happy and make others happier too. Okay. Similarly, the language is used to express our individuality. This is like asserting your identity, telling others about who you are. So one of the important use of a language is to introduce yourself, to tell the world who you are, what you are, what different characteristics you have, what kind of personality you have, what kind of taste you have, what are the things that you like and you do not like, what have you achieved in the life, what are your failures, what is the story of your life, how you are different from others and similar to others. So we use language to express our individuality. Assume you are called for an interview for a very good job, and there are, for one post, say 20 people. You are in the market, you are competing for a good, respectable job, and you have been called to appear for an interview along with 19 others, and there is only single position available. What do? You present yourself in such a way that those who are taking your interview would get impressed, should get impressed. To do that, what you do? You tell the interview panel that how you are different, unique, and could be an asset to the company. It means you are expressing your individuality. So this is what we not only do in a formal setup like interview, but also in our day-to-day life, in everyday life, whether it's between friends, whether it's among neighborhood candidates or any situation. So every time, every day, we have to express our individuality in some form or the other. Okay, so this is a very important function of a language, and this is a fourth important function of a language according to R.L. Trask. Excuse me. So let's move on. Yet another type of language use is to maintain and express our membership. Okay. It means we make use of language to remain part of any group, any association, whether formal or informal. If we have to join, say, a group of youngsters in the locality, what do we have to do? We have to go express ourselves, right? And then we may be allowed. If we are allowed, we have to remain part of that group. So whether you want to join a group or leave a group, you have to use language. So this is a function of language that Trask talks about. And yet the last but not the least one is the we use a language, or function of a language is to persuade, maintain relations, and express emotions. Here I would like to give an example. If you know how to win an argument and you're talking to someone who is interested in understanding your abilities, your side of the story, but doesn't know you much very well, what do? You try your best to persuade him to believe that you are good in communication, you are good in your art, your skill. So that is what usually we do. We convince others to believe in us, believe in our idea, believe in our feelings and thoughts. So it's an act of persuasion. And not only that, we also use language to maintain relations. That is, human being is a social animal. Some social scientist has said this, some philosopher has said this, which means our existence is meaningful when there are at least two. So when there are two individuals or more, then some form of relations are established. If me and there is one more youngsters in my neighborhood, we come together, then friendship as a relation takes up. Friendship as a relation starts. So that relation has to be maintained. How it is done? It is through the use of language. We talk, we talk about things that are common to us. We talk about our past, our future, our present. We talk about issues in the neighborhood. Uh, Other things that young, excuse me, excuse me, please. Yes. So we use language not only to persuade others, but also to maintain relations and also to express emotions. Yes, the last function, according to Trask, is to express emotions. We have understood multiple functions stated by R.L. Trask, and among those functions, the last but important one is to express emotions. We begin with the first one, that is to pass on information. So it's not just to know ideas and thoughts that we share, we express to other person. Also, we express our emotions. using language. Our existence has, uh, has this second important aspect. We are both intellectual as well as emotional as a being. So our thoughts direct us as much as our emotions direct us in our life. So that is why communication being the basic necessity and language being the tool or means to communicate, so language function, right, also has one key, aspect, that is express emotions. So expressing emotion is a function of language. So in this way, we have looked at multiple uh, functions of a language as given by R.L. Trask in his work in the year 1995. Okay. So let us move and go to a different higher level of our understanding of language. Now, uh, language has dual basis. That is, uh, according to Noam Chomsky, was an American linguist, right? One of the most cited author of all time. He, in his study as a linguist of human language, so as a language expert, right? When he was studying human languages, primarily English. So what he realized that language has dual basis. That is information or knowledge of the language and use of the language. If we look at the traditional method of teaching a language, a classical method of teaching any human language, we realize that that classical method used in any institution or any country or any civilization, we know that language, information of language has been given more priority over the use of the language itself. If you look at the classroom, right, of say, for example, English, right? Until recently, in last 10-20 years, things have changed drastically. But prior to that, the focus in a language classroom has mostly been on teaching grammar, teaching vocabulary. Now, what is it? It is actually information about the language. So that is why when Chomsky was studying it, he said that knowing the structure of language in the form of structures, syntax, semantics, and other things, vocabulary, grammar rules. To that, what Chomsky called competence. So, competence is the knowledge of the structure, knowledge of the grammar, knowledge of all those things, parts of the speech, and all those things, which is typically taught in a language classroom. And there is other aspect or the other base of language, that is performance, that is use of language. Now, what is performance? If you pay attention to how we acquired first language, that is our mother tongue, we will realize that as learners of our mother tongue, mothers or people around us in that stage of our life have never taught us grammar. They never made us sit with pen pencil, right, and ask us to write down the rules of the language, our mother tongue. They never did that. Yet we learned our mother tongue. Yet we speak our mother tongue. Yet we are better in terms of expressing our ideas, thoughts, and feelings, and other those functions that RL Trust talks about very much effectively in our mother tongue. Because we paid less attention, or we were made to pay less attention on competence part, and we were encouraged, facilitated on performance part. And that is why our mother tongue is more performance oriented. We can do a lot in our mother tongue as a speech. We are always good in the spoken language when it comes to mother tongue. We feel comfortable, we are fluent, we never hesitate to express anything with clarity in our mother tongue. Excuse me. All this is because when we were acquiring that language, the environment, the people involved in our teaching and learning, in our learning of the language, have facilitated us in becoming a good user of the language rather than focusing on giving us different grammar rules, grammar, all those things. So Chomsky said, no, as we are natural, as we have a natural inclination to learn a language for its use. Therefore, for teaching any second or third language, any additional language, the focus should be given on performative part, language use rather than competence. Yes, that is knowledge of the language. So this kind of shift in focus is based on the functional aspect of language, where language should be taught in a way it is helpful in performing tasks in our day-to-day life. And we know that as per RL Trask, there are multiple functions of a language, and those functions are more to do with performative aspect of the language, the actual use of the language in day-to-day life. So that is why performance should be given importance over competence. This is one view which is primarily propagated by Noam Chomsky. Now let's take this to know your performance aspect of the topic. And if we take this discussion on uh, speech functions, right, and use of language or performative aspects of the language, we have one language expert, H. Clark. Right? He talks about performance, and he calls it a creative activity. And according to Clark, performance is actually a situated discourse. He says that for a performance to happen, there has to be a situation, a context, as it is a social activity where more than one person is needed for the language used. So that is why it is actually a creative activity. And he says that there are multiple scenarios or situations or settings in which this performance happens, this use of language happens. And then he listed down some of possible settings where uh, language use happens. And earlier, if you quickly recall in the earlier slides, we understand how R.L. Trask showed us different uses of language, different functions of language. In a similar way, H. Clark talks about use of language in different settings. For example, he lists personal as a setting, right? That is when friends sit together and talk. We usually call it friendly chat. So that is a setting where language is used. Or two businessmen sit together, or a businessman and a purchaser, consumer talks. That kind of a setting is also a personal setting according to Clark. Or there is a disagreement leading to fight and quarrel. That kind of setting is also a personal setting where language is used. So these are some of situations where language is used in a personal setting. Now, then there are non-personal settings. That is, a teacher teaching in a classroom. This kind of a setting is a non-personal setting, right? It's kind of, though teacher is an individual, but he is performing a public task. So that is why, according to Clark, teaching in a classroom or similar kind of setting is a non-personal setting where language is. Then there is a third kind of setting, that is institutional setting. And in this setting, one example that Clark cites or gives is a press conference. So a press conference where one party, one individual or group of individuals is addressing more than one journalist. This kind of a setting where language is used is called institutional setting. He also talks about one more kind of setting, prescriptive setting. Right? If you go to a doctor, what he does, he diagnoses your condition, tries to identify the symptoms, and then after that prescribes certain medicines. Right. So prescriptive is a kind of setting where a language is used. So he gives examples of a marriage ceremony as a prescriptive setting. Now what happens in a marriage? In a marriage, you have to say what the pandit, what the qazi, or what the man in the church, right, who solemnizes marriage would say. You cannot say things on your own. You are prescribed what to be said. So this kind of language uses a prescriptive marriage. It's prescriptive setting where marriage ceremony is an example. And where else this kind of situation one can see? So usually what happens when you become uh, a head of an institution, right, of a government or a private body, there you may be given written statements that you have to read out. That's it. You may not be allowed to express yourself the way you want. So that kind of a setting is also a prescriptive. Right? Now you have fictional setting, that is in a movie, an actor or in a theater, an actor on a stage is saying the dialogues. So that kind of setting is a fictional setting where language is used. Okay. And then there is also a kind of setting that is called mediated setting. What is this mediated setting? For example, if you ever have been to a courtroom, right, you'll find that adjacent to or near the judge, there is one person with type machine. We usually see that there is a stenographer whose job is to just type what the magistrate says. Okay. So in this particular situation, in a setting where judge is saying something, the other person is just typing. Right? So this is what Clark calls mediated setting where language is used. Or there is a you usually see that leaders who go to different countries will have one or two persons along with them always. What they do, they listen to the points, the conversation in one language, and they interpret or translate that into another language. So this kind of tasks is also a mediated use of it's actually a use of language in mediated setting. Okay. Now there is also private. Now what is private use of language in a private setting? It is where you are sitting or you are talking to yourself. The way Hamlet does, the way a lot of characters do, right? In different cinema, different serials. So speaking to yourself is actually a private setting according to Clark. Okay. So we have looked at not just functions of language, but we have also uh, tried to understand what are different settings in which language is used according to H.H. Clark. Now again, similarly, the way we understood those two things, there is also factors that influence our communication, our language use. What are those factors? What are those uh, different factors that uh, influence our communication, influence our use of the language? So there is one language philosopher or linguist, Roman Jacobson. So Roman Jacobson, when he studied language, he looked at the functions of the language. He came up with six different constitutive factors for a communication to happen. He thinks that six different factors are important or integral. What are those six factors? He said that addresser, addressee, message, context, code, and contact. So these are six different constitutive factors that are actually uh, important in a communication, in a speech, right? Speech is a communication. So in a communicative model, six different things are important. What are those? This addresser, addressee, message, context, code, and contact. Now, our traditional understanding of communication is that for communication to happen, number one, there has to be somebody who is speaking, a speaker. Then there has to be someone who is listening to it. And then there is a message which is being conveyed by the speaker to the hearer or listener. So three factors: address, the speaker, a listener, and the message. This is our general understanding, layman's understanding of how communication is happening. But there are three different other things that plays an important role, according to Roman Jacobson, which acts as factors. Those three are context. Now, what is context? Context is a situation in which communication is happening. Let's take our own example. I am delivering a lecture on speech event, functions of speech. To Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University students of MA English, and whatever points I am explaining is nothing but the message that I am trying to convey. I as a speaker, you as a listener, right, are sharing or is actually benefiting from a message, some information that I knew about this topic, about this subject, I'm sharing with you. So from my side, it is a message that I'm giving to you, right? So Jacobson says this entire thing, this entire communication between you and me is happening in a context. The context, what is this context? I am connected with you online from a location in Hyderabad, and you are connected with me online from another place. So this is happening because there is a scheduled class, and this is entire thing is organized by Ambedkar University. So all these things make up the context in which our communication is happening. Had there been a different context, perhaps a different thing would have happened. Had there been a different context, perhaps you would have been there, I weren't, or if I were there, perhaps you wouldn't be there. Or even assume we both were there, but the topic would have been different. Even if the topic is same, maybe the channel through which we are communicating, that is this internet online platform, this would have been different. So because all these are different factors, including context being one factor, so if the change in the factor, a change in this constituent factor would change the whole communication. Now we have one more constituent factor according to Jacobson, that is code. We understood there is addresser, that is nothing but a speaker. There is addressee, nothing but hearer or listener, and the message, right? And also the context in which this entire communication is happening. Now the fifth factor that Jacobson talks about is actually code. So what is code? In this particular case, right, in a communication model, the language itself is a code. Now one would wonder, how come language is a code? In order to understand that, we have to think it this way. Assume I am actually I am delivering a lecture in English language to English students who know English and who are trying to understand one particular subject, one particular topic. Now assume I know the subject, you are interested in knowing the subject, and I am using English, but you do not know English. What would happen? Will you be able to understand? No. Or you know English, but I am explaining these concepts in, say, Kannada, Telugu, or Marathi, which you do not know. Will you be able to understand the topic, the message that I'm conveying? No. So that is why Jacobson calls language as a code. It means if you do not understand that code, you will not able to comprehend the message that is being said, right? So here code is nothing but the language. And I gave you earlier, I gave you one example. What is that example? The example is that of, Chinese or Russian language. If we do not understand that Chinese language, if we do not recognize in our own brains, in our own mind, the sounds of, uh, Chinese language, then we will not be able to uh, actually uh, comprehend or understand what is being said. So this way, we have understood different uh, different actually factors being explained by Roman Jacobson. And not just different factors. Roman Jacobson also gave different functions of the language as well. In a speech event, there are not just two factors, but also there are different functions, right, that he has given us. What are those 6 functions? Functions are actually emotive, referential, conative, poetic, phatic, metalingual, or reflexive. So there are 6 functions. Now we'll look at one at a time. What is emotive function? Jacobson says, as we use language, it reveals attitude of addressing. And in what way? So if I speak to you or if you speak to me, right, we understand the personality, some aspect of our personality. That is what kind of attitude we share regarding the uh, message, regarding the person who is speaking or regarding the person who is hearing it. So the first function in Jacobson's model, where he talks about 6 factors and six functions. The first function is emotive functions. It reveals attitude of an addressee. In similar way, the second function, that is referential. He says the use of a language has an important function, that is message that describes a situation, an object or a mental state. Then there is a conative function. That is it focuses on the addressee. Right? It talks about poetic function, that is focus on the message. And then there is a fatigue function. It is regarding maintain relation or break ice, greetings and all. Then metalingual reflexive function. That is use of language to talk about language. So these are the six different to know that Roman conception talks about. These are self-explanatory. That's why I think we may not require much explanation. After that comes another linguist, Delheims. He studies the model given by Roman Jacobson of different factors and functions in a communication in a speech event, right? And then he develops his own model called speaking model. Here, speaking is an acronym. So SPEAKING. Each letter in this acronym stands for something. Let's look at that model and understand each letter of that acronym. Here S stands for setting and scene. Now for a communication event, Roman Jacobson said six factors are important, or they are constituent factors. But Delheim says there are different things that matters uh, in a communicative model or in a speech event. What is that? Setting and setting, we know, time and place. Then participants, which means those who are listening to you or those who are hearing you. Ends, right? So what others have understood. Then act sequence, which means in what way the information is being structured. That also matters. Then key, right? And instrumentalities, then norms of interaction and interpretation and genre. So basically, he takes a basic model of communication given by Roman Jacobson. He reworks on that and comes up with an interesting acronym called speaking, where each letter is standing for something. Each letter signifies something. So S signifies setting and scene, P signifies participant, E for ends, A for act sequence, K for key, I for instrumentalities, N for norms of interaction and interpretation, and G for visual. Okay. After understanding these different functions, the speech functions, right, we will move on, considering the time constraint, we will move on to talk about language as a social phenomenon. A language is basically a social fact. That is, we use language in our lives. There cannot be uh, there cannot be good life without use of it. For many things, as we understood earlier, language is essential, whether to share emotions, to do anything, right? Our existence is actually uh, closely linked with the use of it because we are social beings, because our existence is meaningful only we are not individuals but collective. It's more than one. That's why it is a fact. It's a social fact. Then you have social identity, which means we use language. It's actually a social identity. Language is a social identity. Uh, what it means is, if somebody is speaking to us, we will start understanding who he is through the language that that person is using, right? If it is, say, for example, more chaste language, polished language, then we'll immediately start assuming that this person looks like he's educated, or this person's maybe from a urban area, or this person could be from a well-off family, well-to-do family, or this person might have received a good education. So in this way, we are actually building a profile of the speaker. And in a similar way, a listener will also, the speaker can also make a profile of those who are listening. The using of language, the use of the language reveals about the person who is using that language. So that is why the way we understand people by looking at their clothes, the way they wearing it. Similarly, use of language also reveals a lot about the identity of these people. And then social, then comes the another important idea that language is actually a cooperative. As I told you, language comes into picture only when there are at least two people. Now, it's a cooperative activity because if I want to talk to you and you don't pay attention, I don't want to listen. Will this activity happen? That is activity of the speaking happen? No. So I need cooperation from the listener, or any speaker needs cooperation from listeners or hearers. Unless they cooperate, communication may not happen. For it to happen, you need cooperation from the participants, from the hearer or listener. And it's also a carrier of culture. Just now I told you that the way the identity of the speaker is revealed, if not fully, partially because of his use of the language. In a similar way, a culture is also revealed, right? For example, if you come from one particular region in Andhra, say you are from Rayalaseema region of the Andhra Pradesh, and you are speaking to a group of people or a person, then those people in a group will start understanding what kind of regional culture you carry just because you are speaking, because you use certain expressions which are unique to your culture. You use certain words which are typically found in your culture. You reveal idioms and proverbs which are unique to your own culture. So those things will reveal about your culture, right? So it is also language is also not just a social fact or social identity or a cooperative activity. Language is also a carrier of culture. So that is why You see, when the government of India revisited its educational policy, especially this time, that is NEP 2020, through NEP 2020, government is urging us to go for to encourage primary education in mother tongue. There are multiple reasons for that. One reason is that people who use language are more familiar with that language, and it becomes easy for them to understand concepts and ideas in mother tongue. So your mother tongue is important to you, and you can better preserve your mother tongue than anybody else. So if you do not pay attention to your mother tongue, you're not paying attention to the culture that comes with that mother tongue. So every language carries a culture, and there are different states in India whose culture is shaped by the language. You go to Bengal, West Bengal, culture is shaped by Bengali language. You come to Telugu state of Andhra Pradesh, the culture is shaped by the Telugu language. You go to Tamil Nadu, the Tamil culture is shaped by the Tamil language. So if people in Tamil Nadu stops speaking or using Tamil as a language, if people in Bengal stops using Bengali as a language, so not only language will gradually disappear, but also the culture associated with that language will also. So that is why preserving a language is equivalent to preserving the culture. So it is good that the children master mother tongue, learn in mother tongue, understand in mother tongue, and carry forward that mother tongue and take that to culture and language to coming generations. Okay, so we understood that language is also carried a culture. It is also a code, as we discussed earlier. Right? It is a code because if you do not know as a listener, as a hearer, or as an addressee, the code in which the message is delivered, then you will not able to understand the message. You will not able to interpret the message. So it is a code. So that is why we have to learn that code, and we have to use it to understand what is coming in that language. And that is why, see, for example, if we are having a conversation and in English language, and suddenly I am saying, I'm using, say, Bagunnara, for example, right? Or mana culture, right? So it means, I am switching the code. I am bringing, words from other language into the language that I'm using. In this case, using Telugu words in an English, or, on a discussion in English, or using English words, English words in a conversation in Telugu. So in either case, it is code switching or code mixing. Okay. So because language is a code, that's why these are the terminology, that is code switching and code mixing. Uh, I I hope you have understood uh, today's discussions on uh, functions, speech functions, right, and uh, language as a social phenomena. Within speech functions, we looked at different uses of the language, or we call it functions of the language, especially with reference to task, right? Different uses he has shown, and then we looked at different Delheim's model, right? We looked at Jacobson's uh, speech event. Within that, different factors that influence the speech event in his model. Six different factors to be very precise. Uh, that is addresser, addressee, right? Message, context, code, and all those things. And then within Jacobson's model, there are also six different functions, right? Emotive, cognitive, right? Uh, and four different other. So after that, we looked at language as a social phenomenon. We also, prior to that, looked at Delheim's model, speaking model, where speaking is an acronym, right? And each letter in that acronym has a meaning. And after that, eventually, we took up language as a social identity, where we understood language to be a social fact, where we understood language is actually a cooperative activity, and we also tried to understand how language reveals about our social identity, and how language is a carrier of culture, and those who are involved in a speech event, their culture is revealed through use of the language, right? And then eventually, as a last point, we took up language as a code, right? Unless we understand that code, we cannot understand the message, right? So with this, I think I'll close or bring to close our today's discussion in this online counseling class being hosted by Dr. P.R. Ambedkar Open University. And if you have any questions, you can type it in the chat box, or if you are listening to it online on YouTube or other platforms, you can text there, you can comment there of your queries and other things. And if there is anything that we should take up in the next class, we can also suggest that in the comment box. I'll try to look at it, and I'll try to address your queries and concerns regarding this subject and paper, especially course 7, aspects of language and their relation to literature. So thank you so much for joining this classroom, and looking forward to meet you in the next class. Thank you.